Hello and welcome back to One Book on Louisa. My name is Miss Spade, and the sleepy puppy next to me is named Dottie. And we are going to read some chapters together of our One Book, One Louisa book, The Wild Robot. So we'll start with chapter 13, The Aftermath. Daybreak and the storm had passed, but the sounds of water were everywhere. The air was filled with the dripping sounds of mountain runoff and the sloshing sounds of flooded streams. And then came a very different sound. It was the clanging sound made when a robot slips on a wet rock. Ooh, can't you just hear that scraping? As Roz worked her way downhill, she scanned the aftermath of the storm. Giant mounds of mud and debris had formed below the cliffs. The island's central river had crested its banks and spilled into the nearby fields and forests. Some trees had been uprooted, others were submerged, their upper branches barely poking above the floodwaters, their lower branches swarming with fish instead of birds. After such a storm, you might expect to see animal corpses scattered among all the devastation, but the animals seemed to have survived just fine. Somehow, they had known the storm was coming, and they had found shelter before it rolled in. Lowland creatures who had sought refuge on higher ground were waiting patiently for the water to recede. Deer were wading through the flooded fields. Beavers were busily collecting a trove of fallen branches. Geese honked in the sky before splashing down into a watery section of the forest. Clearly, the animals were experts at survival. Clearly, the robot was not. Roz was crusted with mud and grit, so she gave herself another good cleaning, but that only revealed her dents and her scratches. They were really starting to add up. She hardly resembled the perfect robot who had appeared on the shore just a week earlier. The wilderness was taking a toll on poor Roz, so she felt something like relief when she spotted the quiet hole in the side of the mountain. It looked like a safe place for a robot. She stomped across the hillside and up to the cave, but never stopped to wonder what might be lurking within. Who do we know that lives in caves? But we're going to find out. Chapter 14, The Bears. Roz stomped into the cave and then she stomped right back out. Please stay away, said the robot to the two bears, who were now nipping at her heels. You see, when Roz stomped into the cave, she accidentally woke a brother and a sister bear from their morning nap, which is never a good idea. And to make matters worse, bears have an instinct that drives them to attack when a creature runs away, especially if the creature running away is a mysterious, sparkling monster. So, as the startled bears watched Roz stomping out of their cave, they really had no choice at all. They simply had to take up the chase. Roz tried her best to outrun the bears. She leapt over rocks and wove through trees and stomped across the mountainside at full speed. But the bears were young and strong and fast, and the robot still had so much to learn about moving through the wilderness. She never even saw the tree root. That's like me walking through the forest. One moment she was stomping along, and the next moment she was flying through the air and thumping down onto a rotten log. Clumps of soft wood stuck to her side as she stood and faced her attackers. Wouldn't you be afraid if two bears were charging toward you? Of course you would. Everyone would. Even the robot felt something like fear. Roz was programmed to take care of herself. She was programmed to stay alive. Here are the illustrations. And as the robot watched the bears charging toward her, she knew her life was in serious danger. The bears slammed into Roz, knocking her against the trunk of a towering tree. Then one bear dove at her legs, and the other clawed at her chest. If only the robot had swung her fists or kicked her feet, She could have scared them off. One good bop in the nose would have sent them running, but the robot's programming would not allow her to be violent. Clearly, Roz was not designed to fight bears. Powerful jaws chomped her arms. Sharp claws slashed her face. A massive head rammed her chest. Please stay away, said the robot. Roar, said the sister bear. Roar, said the brother bear. And then the bears went in for the kill. But the robot had vanished. Cliffhanger on a cliff. Just can't make this up. Chapter 15, The Escape. Using all the strength in her legs, Roz jumped straight up into the air and landed on a tree branch overhead. The tree shook with the sudden weight of the robot, and then thunk, thunk. Two pine cones bounced off Roz, and a moment later, thunk, thunk. The same pine cones bounced off the bears below. The bears grunted with annoyance. This gave Roz an idea. The robot's programming stopped her from being violent, but nothing stopped her from being annoying. So Roz plucked pine cones from the nearby branch and lobbed them down at the bears. Thunk, 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 thunk. Each pine cone bounced off its target with annoying accuracy and whipped the young bears into a frenzy. Ooh, I bet they were hot. Said the sister bear. Said the brother bear. I do not understand you bears, said the robot. Roz was about to unload a whole armful of annoying pine cones when a distant roar echoed through the forest. Back at the cave, the mother bear was calling for these two, and she did not sound happy. The young bears looked at each other. They knew they were in trouble, but before lumbering home, they glared up at Roz and snorted one last time. More than anything, they wanted to kill the robot. Woo! There was some drama in these chapters. All right. Let's stop and think about what we read. So Roz had been beaten up pretty badly by the storm, and the aftermath was her trying to figure out how to survive and get back to a safe place. She saw a cave and thought that's a good idea to take refuge. And then she found out that it wasn't such a great idea because there were two sleeping bear cubs. And I don't know about you, but I do not think it's a good idea to disturb sleeping bears or bears that are awake, either way. So the bears started to chase Roz and they began to attack her. And the author mentioned something about it being their instinct. So I do not think that the bears hate Roz, but I do think they were trying to protect one another and their instinct is to stay alive. So they were attacking Roz, and then Roz decided to use an old island trick using those pine cones, those pesky pine cones, and she started throwing them at the bears. And then at the end, their mother called them home. So that means there's three of them, a big mama and a brother and sister bear. How is she going to stay safe from them? I don't know, but we will continue reading this together. Until we meet again, continue to read because readers are leaders. And Sleepy Dottie and I will see you next time.